On the morning of August 29, 2005, the residents of New Orleans stepped outside their homes and took a deep breath. Hurricane Katrina had finally passed. The howling winds that reached 175 miles per hour had begun to fade, moving north into Mississippi. The worst, it seemed, was over. Local news reporters stood on empty streets, broadcasting a message that brought instant relief to millions. The city had survived. But everything the public believed about that morning was a lie. Hurricane Katrina did not drown New Orleans with its winds. It didn't destroy the city during the storm. The true catastrophe began hours later, in absolute silence, while families were returning to their living rooms believing the danger had passed. 8 hours after the storm moved away, 1,833 people would be dead, not from the flying debris or the Category 5 hurricane force, but from an invisible engineering failure that turned a vibrant American metropolis into a 20-foot deep lake. To understand how a modern American city vanished underwater in broad daylight, you have to look past the storm clouds. You have to look at a fatal decision made 4 decades earlier and the terrifying illusion of safety that kept 500,000 people in harm's way. New Orleans was a city built on a dangerous gamble. Nestled in a geographic bowl below sea level, squeezed between the Mississippi River and Lake Pontchartrain, its very existence was an engineering miracle. For centuries, the city didn't grow by strategic urban planning. It grew out of economic necessity, anchored to the giant trade artery that fed the entire North American continent. To keep this logistical dream alive, the United States Army Corps of Engineers constructed over 350 miles of levees, floodwalls, and massive pumping stations. This intricate maze of concrete and steel wasn't just infrastructure, it was the artificial lungs keeping the city breathing. Every night on Bourbon Street, every plate of gumbo served, every live jazz performance continued because the public trusted that wall to hold back the water. That trust was built on a promise made back in 1965. Following the devastation of Hurricane Betsy, Congress tasked the Corps of Engineers with building the largest flood protection system in regional history, the Hurricane Protection and Flood Control Project. On paper, it was a masterpiece of civil engineering designed to withstand the most brutal Gulf storms. In reality, it was a ticking time bomb built on dangerous compromises. Deep beneath the swampy Louisiana soil, contractor reports began to raise red flags during construction. The original blueprints called for steel sheet pilings to be driven deep into the earth to anchor the levees against immense water pressure. But to save time and millions of dollars in federal budget cuts, key sections of these steel supports were installed at less than half their intended depth. The internal reports warning of this compromise were quietly filed away in federal offices. Decades passed, and with every storm season that ended without a catastrophe, the illusion of safety grew stronger. The levees became as permanent and unquestioned in the minds of residents as the river itself. Local politicians assured the public that the system was rock solid, while independent geologists who questioned the structural integrity were largely ignored. So when Katrina began gathering unprecedented power over the warm waters of the Atlantic in late August 2005, the threat didn't encounter a city in panic. It encountered a city convinced that its concrete shields would always bring them back to normal. At 7:30 a.m. on August 29, the storm's eye was already tracking east toward Mississippi. In the Lakeview neighborhood, residents were walking into their yards to inspect minor roof damage, relieved that the worst had passed. But just a few blocks away at the 17th Street Canal, the foundation under the floodwall was quietly disintegrating. There was no sudden explosion or cinematic wave. Water began seeping under the steel pilings, washing away the soft soil beneath the base, a structural failure known in engineering as piping. Within minutes, a 300-foot section of the wall collapsed inward. Thousands of gallons of water from Lake Pontchartrain poured into the streets, rising by several feet every minute. 2 hours later, at 9:30 a.m., the industrial canal breached on the city's east side. A wall of black, muddy water swept through the lower Ninth Ward, a historically working-class African-American neighborhood built on the lowest elevation in the city. Wood frame houses were ripped from their foundations and tossed like toys into the surging current. For thousands of residents who lacked cars or financial resources to evacuate, survival became a matter of minutes. As the water swallowed ground floors, families were forced into their attics with water rising up to their chests. Armed with hammers, axes, and crowbars, people frantically chopped holes through their own roofs from the inside to escape suffocating in the dark. By late afternoon, rooftops across New Orleans were dotted with stranded survivors. They used bright spray paint on the shingles to send messages to passing helicopters, numbers indicating how many were alive inside, urgent pleas for medical help, or simple words like "baby inside" and "help SOS." Down in the city center, the Louisiana Superdome became a sanctuary of last resort. Originally prepared to hold 10,000 people for a short duration, over 25,000 evacuees were packed onto the concrete floors. Within hours, power failed, air conditioning died in the stifling 100-degree humidity, and clean water supplies ran out, stranding the city's most vulnerable citizens in catastrophic conditions. By nightfall, 80% of New Orleans was submerged under 20 feet of toxic water. The city had not fallen to the unstoppable force of a hurricane. It had been drowned from within by a structural illusion that took less than 3 hours to completely fall apart. When the water finally receded weeks later, the official investigation began. In 2006, the American Society of Civil Engineers released a devastating report. It confirmed that the levees didn't fail because Katrina was simply too powerful. They failed because of fatal design defects, inadequate soil testing, and decades of budget-driven engineering compromises by the federal government. The disaster exposed a glaring reality to the world. A superpower nation with military dominance across the globe had allowed one of its cultural capitals to collapse due to neglected domestic infrastructure. Out of the 400,000 residents who evacuated, over 100,000 never returned, permanently changing the demographic and cultural fabric of New Orleans forever. Following the disaster, Congress poured $14 billion into rebuilding the New Orleans flight system to withstand Category 5 storms. Today, it stands as the most advanced coastal defense network in North America. But this massive upgrade came only after the tragedy took its toll, not before. What makes this history so chilling isn't just what happened in 2005, but what lies ahead. Today, federal reports highlight dozens of major American cities relying on aging, underfunded flood defenses that face the exact same structural vulnerabilities as New Orleans did 2 decades ago. Decisions made in quiet government offices to trim budgets, delay maintenance, and trust outdated infrastructure happen every single day. The story of Katrina is a reminder that the most dangerous moment isn't when the storm hits, but when we convince ourselves that the barriers we built will always hold. Thank you for watching. If this deep dive changed how you look at history's greatest disasters, hit the like button and subscribe for more investigative stories. Let me know in the comments which city's hidden history we should explore next. Until next time.